conclusion that God is a woman, a very slutty woman. Why do I think this? I don't know. Maybe because God is always trying to fuck me!
Ladies and gentlemen, sit back and enjoy Mega Meeple!
Greetings and welcome to the Mega Meeple. Thank you everybody for smashing that download button. Appreciate it very much. Gotten a little bit closer to home. Asked my good friend Dawson to come on this episode. Dawson, how the hell are you?
I'm doing pretty well. It's the middle of a work week. I actually took yesterday off just to rest, which was nice. But
yes. Was it everything you expected it to be?
I sat on my ass. So yes.
There we go. had some beers, binge some Netflix or whatever. Just spend time with the wife and dog and cat.
Yep.
That's indeed. Yeah. Dawson, we've. It's funny. I'm not sure how many years we've known each other. I could only my calendar of which I gauge how long I known someone, especially with RPG games, is how many campaigns we worked through together. so I'm saying what, two and a half, maybe 3 campaigns.
Something like that. Yeah. I know I first met you. Oh gosh, no, I can't pin down a year, but it's been a while.
Yeah, I seem to remember. Now, Dawson's part of our RPG group that I play with. Typically every other Friday night. I mean, barring scheduling and work schedules and Renaissance festival season. I know. We have to take some time off from that, but it's typically me, Dawson, and Steve and Chris. We hasn't had a Karen for a while because of her work schedule. She has been busting her ass, but yeah, I don't know. I seem to remember Karen bringing me into the group. I think, if I remember correctly, you were in the middle or just started the Iron Gods campaign.
Yeah, Pathfinder. It was the one that Steve was running, and you came in fairly early, as far as I recall.
Okay.
Stayed with us through that one, and then we did a couple of one-offs, and then I went to Emerald Spire.
Yep. And that took a little over a year, because I remember as we were starting to wrap that up, I was looking at my BGG stats, where I log all these plays in. I was like, damn, we've been doing this we've been doing this a year. And I think it was about the time we were about to wrap that up. And then you were nice enough to sit through my little short 3-session stint trying GMing, and now we're I guess kind of deviate a little bit from Pathfinder, and Chris now is we're doing a BattleTech campaign with him, so it's a pretty neat group that we have, that we kind of pass the torch to one another on, okay, who has a campaign they want to run, and who's gonna, the common question is, once we know how many more sessions are left in the campaign, it's like, okay, what's the next campaign we're gonna do, and who's GMing it? So
right.
But for for those of us that are not our family and friends or people in our gaming group there that at least better be listening. I'm going to tell them they better listen because, hey, Dawson's on the show. They better listen. If they're not going to listen, if they're not going to listen to my voice, they better listen to my voice when it's dueling with you. So, but
I've often been told that. Oh, sorry.
Tell us a little bit about just how you got into gaming and what your history in gaming is, and how you got to the point where you are now.
Oh wow! How long do we have?
We got about an hour, but
Yeah.
I want to reserve at least a half hour of that time of talking about
Sure.
advice for GMers and maybe share some humorous stories of some of the things from our campaigns.
Yeah. Well, so the quick origin story, I guess, is I started playing in high school. A good friend of mine, Travis Price, ran some advanced Dungeons and Dragons for me and a couple of friends. Nothing very rules heavy, and I didn't really get into the full mechanics of it until a couple of years later. I actually started working at a game store in Greenville, South Carolina. And, being there, I had to kind of know the product. Got kind of mentored by one of the best GMs I've ever had, a fellow named Ben Shanks, and just fell in love with the immersiveness of the worlds, So from there, I just kind of kept with it, ran I don't know how many campaigns down in Greenville. And then when I moved to Charlotte, one of the first things I did was try and find some geeks. And I did that at a Caribou Coffee on a meetup in 2012. I couldn't tell you exactly the date. I just know that much. But it was with a fellow named Mario Butter and another good friend who is known as Akbar, James Morrow. And yeah, they kind of showed me the ropes as far as Charlotte gaming was concerned, showed me where to go to find people who play, and I just kept going from there.
That's pretty wild. So, what was the first? How many different RPG systems have you worked in?
Oh goodness. Let's see. Well, Dungeons and Dragons, obviously, multiple editions there. Pathfinder, which is about the same. Shadowrun, Savage Worlds. What else? Seventh Sea, Midgard, Lord of the Rings. What's that one called? I could go down to all my books, but I'm upstairs right now, and that's weird. I ran through a couple of End of the Worlds scenarios from FASA, based on what you actually ran for us. I liked it so much I picked up those books.
Oh, okay.
Vampire the Masquerade, Big Eyes Small Mouth, which is getting a new edition here pretty soon. I'm probably leaving out half a dozen others, but I do need to say, and my wife just corrected me with a whisper, it was before 2012 that I moved to Charlotte, and I don't know why I said 2012. It was 2007 or 6, something like that. Okay, so 2007 or 6 is when I actually moved to Charlotte and met with Akbar and Mario Butter, but that's kind of neither here nor there.
It's a few years off.
Sure. I mean, I like to think I'm
neither here nor there. We got.
Yeah, that's right. So my wife is making commentary in the background that probably isn't being picked up here. We got married in 2012, which is why it is such a significant year for me. So that's probably why it was on my mind.
There we go. Everything kind of that's your. That's your year zero. There's a BC and the AD after that year. So
that's when my life actually began. Was when we got married.
So hi, Katie.
Hi.
Yeah, Katie's been part of our game group as well. Although she kind of we kind of hog the table, and then she kind of sits in the living room, cuddling up with the dog and the cats, and she just kind of she rolls her dice from there and calls out her actions. So, but it's everybody's engaged. I know at some point where I'd like to get into like some tips for new GMs or up and coming or somebody that been playing RPGs for a while and they see all the fun that the GM is having trying to kill their party. So, I don't know. But and then thinks to themselves, well, I'd like to try that, so if anybody out there is wondering, they go to the game store, they see all these books, and the whole shelf just full of books of all these different things, and even some of the things that you had mentioned. Is there a particular like system that you think would be good for a new or inspiring GM to pick up and learn, or something that's not too rules heavy or math heavy, or something that they're able to pick up fairly simple on their first outing?
Yeah. I think Savage Worlds is probably one of the easiest systems to just kind of read quickly through and hit the ground running. The rules are nowhere near as complicated as something like Dungeons and Dragons, and the math is all pretty straightforward. Plus, it lends itself to a little bit more fun because you have their exploding dice system, where if you roll the maximum on a dice, you get to roll it again and keep adding up. So there's a lot of fun aspects of Savage Worlds, and it certainly has depth to it. You can get into the stories and the backgrounds, the settings that they've made for it to really dig in. But as far as what you have to know just walking up to the table, it's one of the easiest just to pick up and start running.
So now you mentioned some of the people that was influential to you when you first got started. What was one of the first things that you learned and someone instructed you or taught you how to be a GM?
Well, Ben Shanks, as I mentioned earlier, he really drilled home the idea of Rule Zero, and I don't know if it's still printed in D&D books now, but Rule Zero used to read, "This is a game and it's for fun," or something to that effect. And it basically meant that everything else was kind of tertiary to, we're here to have fun, So you have to keep that in mind, just to not make yourself go crazy. I can sit down at a table where I'm GMing and plot out every single move that the characters might possibly make, and then when they actually start rolling dice, they will inevitably find the one path that I did not plan out. And if I haven't said in my mind that I'm here to have fun just as much as they're here to have fun, and if that's their idea of fun, then I just need to roll with it, then none of us are going to have a good time. So yeah, the concept that you're here to have fun, combine that with Whedon's law of don't be a dick, and I think you're good to go.
All right. Yeah, it's I'll just say is like I want to welcome everybody to the game table, but if somebody's gonna, well, that brings up another question. Is like, have you ever had an experience where And I'm assuming I don't fit into this description because otherwise we wouldn't be together. So, if you have somebody at your table that's being a dick, how do you handle that?
There are a couple of different ways. There's always the direct approach. You can, as the GM, go straight to them and say, hey, I'm noticing this and this behavior. It doesn't really mesh with the group. Is there something we can do to kind of rectify the situation? Or you can have, you can ask other people in the group if the GM maybe isn't the closest person to the dick, they can ask somebody else at the table who might be a better friend of that person. Say, hey, can you talk to them, see what's kind of going on? And if that doesn't work, you can always just tell them, hey, we're not going to play as long as these particular behaviors continue. I have known of GMs who will completely disband a campaign over one player, only then to call every other player back like a month later to try and pick it back up again. Whereas that works, the news of the campaign continuing will always get back to the person who's not included. And then you're just left with that awkward situation. So it's always better just to take a direct approach. Obviously try and be as polite as you can, figure out the source of the dickiness. Maybe there's some kind of underlying issue there and you just need to kind of work through it.
Yeah. Cause it's not always a situation where that's a person's personality and, that's just the way they are, that type of thing. But, they may be going through a really difficult time. And their dickiness, so to speak, is just a symptom of something that's deeper, that's more personal or whatever that you may need to just address or to say, hey, what like you said, what can we do to help you work through this? And and that's where that's where the whole camaraderie and friendships come into play. It's like, hey, we're getting together on a common focus or a common interest in a hobby, but that's not the end to be all to end all type thing. It's like, okay, we're all friends here. We're all here to have fun. So if one of us is hurting, then hey, what could the rest of us do to help lighten the load in a sense, or make this time together a source of maybe, if nothing else, like a distraction away from whatever's been bothering them.
Yeah, and then you also will have players who will insist that that behavior is just how their character would act. And in cases like that, it's best to just say, okay, well, being that way will almost likely get your character, or almost positively get your character killed, because that's just what guards do in town. You kind of have to assess each situation, and if somebody's really going through just some hard shit in their life, maybe it's best that they step away from the table for a while, and you let them know in the kindest way possible, hey, this isn't a shun forever. This is just a, step away to help get life back in order kind of thing. Because it's like you said, you never know what somebody's going through.
Yeah. And likewise, I mean, that's I talked about it in past episodes. Like I didn't put an episode out at all for the whole month of July. I mean, I still gamed, but it was editing a podcast, and Christ, I'm looking back as like because I put out my top 50 games of all time, and then my games anticipated for Gen Con and stuff like that, and it's like, hell, I'm surprised I was even able to do that with all the crap that was going on. So sometimes you just got to step away from whatever, and that whatever that thing is could be a source of just a lot of fun and distraction. But there comes a times where it's like, well, I gotta take a break and focus on. There's other things more important that I need to put my effort and concentration on. So,
Yeah.
Alrighty. Yeah. So I know one of the you talked about you could have all these come up with all these stories and paths and stuff for your campaign to go in. Now let me ask you this before I get to my initial question. What I see all these and each it seems like each system has them is these little and I forget what they're called, but they're like pre-made sessions and like so like you have your core book rules and you have all these GM book, and then you have your bestiary books and of all the different monsters you come across. But then they have these little mini books of different campaigns or sessions of a campaign that are like kind of pre-done for you.
Yeah.
And what do you say? What are the pros and cons of going through one of those versus just home brewing one of your own?
Oh, wow. So a pro for a pre-generated campaign is that most of the legwork is already done for you. You don't have to get stats from monsters or roll these random encounters or try and think up different traps or what have you. Somebody else has already done all that for you, and you just kind of drop the players into the situation and let them figure it out. The con with that, though, is that when the players inevitably start to veer away from that adventure path, you as the GM have to find creative ways to put them back into it without feeling like they're just being forced into a single narrative. So yeah, pro that you don't have to do nearly as much work. Con that when you do have to do work, it has to be very creative and very on the fly. Now, homebrews, I love homebrews. I only ran them for years. The biggest negative is you have to spend so much time planning. I don't know if you've heard now, but there are professional GMs that actually get paid to run games. And that's because what they're doing is they're getting the ideas of what kind of campaign people want to be in, and then writing it out, statting all the monsters, finding the traps, creating the adventure around what this group of players collectively decided they wanted to do. That's a lot of legwork. That's, you could sit down at your computer and write for, 10 hours thinking, oh yeah, this is great. And then the players get through what you've written in about 30 minutes. So, or sometimes on the flip side, you could write for 45 minutes and it takes them 3 sessions to trudge their way through. It all just depends on kind of the decisions that are out of your control. So that's the big negative is just the amount of work that one has to put in for homebrew. The positive is that you do get to control kind of any of the narrative. There's no end goal that's preset unless you set one for them. So it lends itself to a lot more fun. Just having the players just kind of go off and do what they want. But
Yeah, and one of the things that's really impressed me, especially when a GM is doing a home brew or something of their own creation, it's like, where did they come up with all this stuff? so, so if anybody is any inspiring GMs or maybe a GM out there that has only done the I don't know, preordained campaigns,
Pre-generated.
pre-generated, and they said, "Well, I wanted to." Is there what does the GM draw from when they do a homebrew? Do they have to? I don't know, do a lot of improv? Do they watch a lot of movies? Read a lot of books? What did they? What pool did they tap into to come up with all those ideas?
All of the above, honestly. I mean, I've set quote unquote homebrews, having the adventurers follow the path of the Wizard of Oz, as well as Alice in Wonderland. But really, I mean, when we see things that inspire us, be they television shows, sci-fi, or movies, Lord of the Rings, books, I mean, there's a catalog of hundreds of Dungeons and Dragons books and other fantasy novels, vampire novels, anything like that. Anything that inspires you can be put into an RPG. You just have to find kind of the right RPG to fit that inspiration. So yeah, I mean, it really just depends on what gets you going. I've had non-player characters in my campaigns, based on supernatural characters, based on Star Trek characters. I have one reoccurring character that I try to put in all of my campaigns, who is he's a lich, but he's based off of King Midas in that everything he touches turns to gold, but everything he touches also becomes part of his phylactery. So the only way to destroy him is to destroy everything he's ever touched. So he's kind of if the players piss me off that much, they have to fight him because there's really no way of getting rid of him.
So, that brings me to another question. Is like how where's that line with the GM that on one side kind of helping the players along, or versus the other side of the line where it's like, okay, there's this boss or this monster or whatever it is, that is really, really going to task your players to now. I mean, I don't know if this is like common practice, but I know Chris usually, when he plays our campaigns, he usually has one or two characters already drawn up when his character dies. Because it's like, yeah, I'm gonna die. So as soon as he dies, he brings in somebody else, like a brother or whatever. Yeah. So where's that line for the GM? Is like, okay, helping the players along versus trying to kill everybody.
A lot of that's kind of going to be determined in whatever character creation you do. The GM, it's kind of the GM's responsibility to tell the players up front, hey, this is going to be a very lethal campaign, or hey, this is going to be kind of a tongue-in-cheek campaign, or this is going to be super powered, anything like that. So he or she needs to take responsibility there at the beginning to let the players kind of know what to expect. I've gained a reputation of being a player killer I don't think it's actually well earned. I haven't killed a lot of player characters comparatively. I don't think, but it all just depends on that initial expectation set from the beginning. That's not to say that that shenanigans at the table won't push the GM into action that might potentially be lethal for everyone. So it's another kind of social aspect, is just kind of knowing the table, reading the room. I play in a game sometimes on Saturdays where it seems like all joking is great until a point, and it's never exactly sure where that point is. But as soon as that point is reached, it's like, uh-oh, GM is about to kill us, and so we all have to get really serious.
That actually reminds me of you'll know this story, but I just want to share it. Is like that the short little 3-session GM that I tried. It's kind of odd that out of that whole 3, it was a short session just for me to dip my toes in the pool. But I remember your character was the only one in the group that wound up dying. And I remember when and that's another question. It was like, you see these GMs roll the dice like behind a screen, or sometimes if they don't have a screen, they hide the dice behind their hand. I would ask you in a little bit why they do that, but just to share this story is like, we were doing the end of the world, the Norse gods, the Wrath of the Gods, and it was one of the few scenarios that was in the one book I had, that instead of the players just playing to try to survive, that it was a campaign that there were some opportunities where the players actually got to participate in and fight along the gods to win the game. And I remember in the last session, the main battle, it's like I was rolling. It was like I rolled the dice. I was looking at the stats on the monster. Is like, and you'd done something. I'm rolling. It's like, and I'm trying to think to myself, trying to figure out how could I fudge this. It looks like no. I'm sorry, you're dead.
My character ended up drinking the blood of the world serpent. Thinking, hey, maybe this will give me his strength. No, it didn't. It killed him.
But happy ending. You did get revived at the end. So
yeah, that's right.
So getting back to my question, is like how. So when you guys are rolling the dice behind the screen, I think I kind of know the answer, but I just want to get the semi-official word from a experienced GM. What's the purpose of hiding the roll dice behind the screen that the players can't see the results?
I've never been a big fan of GM screens, so I can tell you a lot of it is to add to the mystery. There is a certain suspense, especially when it comes to battles in RPGs of, is this the blow that's going to, turn the tables for everyone, or is this the blow that's going to kill my character, or is this the save that if the boss fails, he's going to die, and
especially when the GM starts rolling over and over and over and over again.
You pretty much know you're in trouble. It adds to suspense. It's just a way of kind of building the atmosphere. Yeah, that's one of my cats in the background. I actually have a set of dice that have no numbers on them. It's just a set of solid white dice that on occasion when I have used a GM screen, I'll sometimes know the outcome that I want to happen, and so I'll roll that blank dice just for the sound, and then tell them what happened. So.
You're tipping your hand. Now we know what the next time you GM's like, are those the blank die?
Yeah. Well, and then sometimes if I am feeling vindictive, I'll just roll them out on the table, and you'll see a completely solid white D20, be like, oh, look, it's a natural crit, and you die. But yeah, and another part of it too is not just the suspense, but if the GM needs to make a judgment call. So let's say you're playing Savage Worlds, and the GM has just scored a massive hit on your character, and he's rolled all this dice for damage, and he knows there's no possible way that your character can survive it. Because they've rolled behind the screen, the player doesn't know that that's what just happened. And at that point, the GM can kind of just wave his or her hand and say, all right, you take a blow, it hurts, but you're not dead. Maybe it knocks you unconscious for a little bit. So it's a way of controlling the narrative.
Now you brought up another thing too that I think is really important, and I'd like you to talk about it, give some insight and from your experiences, is how important I guess you call it session 0 is, where not only where the players get together and create their characters, but also just the discussion of, okay, what is this campaign going to be about? How important is that session 0 is just to get together with the players and just hash things out of what the campaign's going to be?
A lot of that's going to be dependent upon the players and the GM themselves. To me personally, session 0 is kind of the background. It's the foundation that you're building the rest of the campaign on. It's a chance for all of the players to kind of get acquainted to the other player characters, decide whether or not some of the PCs might have known each other before everything starts. And again, like you said, it's a way to set the boundaries and let everybody know this is the kind of the content that you should expect from this game.
And just kudos to you and to Steve and Chris and everybody. That's, I mean, my first outing on the GM thing is my players, including Dawson here, my players were experienced GMs, and I don't know how many years of cumulative experience and knowledge that I was working with here, but that was so. My advice to anybody out there wanting to try GMing or for the first time is, if you could get a group of people that have a lot of experience GMing, and have those people be as your players, you're going to learn a lot. Because one of the things that I learned with GMing with you guys is, one of the things that you guys told me from the very beginning is say yes, or find a way to say yes.
Yeah.
And another thing is, and I think I shared this in our time together. It's like that there was a point in that first session I was ready to say, you know what, fuck it, I'm putting this away, let's pull out a board game, and it's just so because I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, all right, well, you have, and you talked about, you have this scenario, you have this path, or you have this mission that you want your players to go on, but invariably I think 99.99% of the time, they're going to go off somewhere else, or they're. So one of the things that you guys had recommended to me is like, all right, well, if they're going off somewhere else, if it's not location specific, and maybe you could speak to this if it is location specific, it's like, all right, well, if they have to do something, then put whatever they need to do in front of them.
Yeah.
And in a sense, but just throw a log in there in the middle of the road, and they have to deal with this big tree in the middle of the road before they move on their journey. So those are two things the two big things I really took away from those times with you guys, GM. And if anybody sits down in any of our groups or gaming sessions, I've always explained it to people as sort of like Pathfinder meets Mystery Science Theater 3000, because half the time we're half the time we're laughing about something that happened in the campaign, or somebody does some irreverent pop culture reference that just has the rest of us all rolling on this underneath the table. So what are some of the I guess most humorous or memorable things that it could be years since you've done this particular campaign, but it's like, oh yeah, you remembered it. You meet that person again. It's like, oh, remember the time we did such and such a campaign, and your character did this or this happened, and I know you have them.
Yeah, I've got a few. So as a player, you always have more opportunities just to get into fuckery, as it were. So probably the most reckless character I ever played was this barbarian who was just not bright, and decided that anytime something needed to be tested, he could just test it. Chalice on this altar with a strange liquid in it, stick the finger in his mouth. That was his go-to thing to do. Stick it in his mouth. It was basically his motto towards the end of his life, which was not very long.
I wonder why.
Because at one point it was they found these beads, and then the wizard wasn't there to identify him, so he's like, "Oh, what's this?" And he pops it in his mouth, and it ended up being a fireball, and so his head exploded. So, and that GM was not very forgiving. He was like, "Yeah, well."
What was the save rule on that?
No, there wasn't. There was no save rule on that. Yeah. As a GM, probably the funniest things that I do is set up situations that the characters can then exploit. Let's see if I can think of the best example from this. Okay, so I was running a Savage Worlds version of a Midgard campaign that I actually wrote, and this was actually at DragonCon a few years ago. And part of it is, and this is supposed to be just kind of flavor text that that the players don't really have much control over. They're trying to escape this dock. They're on a ship. The ship's been chained in, and they've got to find a way to get out. Well, what the way it's written is the captain of the ship is a druid, and he calls some wind, and his animal companion is basically a magical Leopleurodon, and helps kind of break the chains and pull the ship free. And because I had written that magical Leopleurodon in there, not necessarily the magical Leopleurodon, but it was a Leopleurodon. Of course, two of the players at that table knew all about the YouTube sensation of Charlie and Candy Mountain, and for the rest of the night, like that was their characters, as they were those two unicorns. And the goal of the entire campaign was no longer to, find this wizard to undo this terrible thing. They were going to Candy Mountain, and everyone around them was Charlie. And it was because the rest of the table was, I guess, fun enough. They had no problem with it. They just rolled with completely derailing that campaign, but it was hilarious, but I think by the end of it, everybody's stomachs kind of hurt from all of the, we're going to Candy Mountain, Charlie, anytime somebody failed something, they would be shun, just, so yeah, that's kind of that was probably the height of tomfoolery for my GMing goes.
Yeah, I think for me, I think in Iron Gods I played a android killer. I think I remember. Yes,
yeah, you did, and for a while you played an android, and that didn't go well.
Yeah. So, what was the one thing where we came across one guy and we beat him down, and I go up to him and he looks up to me and says mercy, and I
yes, yeah. I was not the GM for that. That was Steve, but that was hilarious because I don't remember if he was crucial to the story or not. I kind of think he was.
Yeah, because when he died.
Oh, actually, no. Wait, I was the GM for this. Was not Iron God.
That's when all the other all the other people out in the oh god.
Yeah, this
whole multitude of people just disappeared.
Right. Yeah, this was Emerald Spire, which I did run. Yes, I remember that now. So, and your character wasn't an android killer.
Yeah. What?
He was some kind of big brute. I just remember that much. But yeah, so I embellished the Emerald Spire to kind of include the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Right.
And and they fight the first. They're fighting the first one, Pestilence, and then they finally win, or get him, on the ropes. And part of the way I'd written it was, if you show them mercy, then things go better for the party. So he looks up and he says, oh, mercy, and your character is just like, okay, just completely put your boot through the thing's head. Releasing pestilence across the land. I mean, a third of the world just dies of a plague because no mercy was shown.
Oops, my bad.
It was, yeah, it was just one of those things you kind of have to laugh at.
Okay, so as a GM, it was like, oh shit. So what kind of what kind of creative gymnastic did you have to do to I think we just went with it, but yeah, what kind of what kind of adjustments did you do, if any, when that happened? Because as a player, I'm like, I'm thinking, okay, we beat this guy to a pulp. And he calls out for mercy and is like, okay, I'll put you out of your misery. And I stomped his head in. So.
I had to adjust a few things.
Sorry.
It was all right. Basically, the powers that be, because you guys were playing in a very mythic campaign, lots of epic things going on. So the powers that be ended up taking notice of the party and their actions before they ordinarily would have, which made a few things down the road more difficult for you, and a few things more easily. And that was just kind of stuff I kept track of in the background. But yeah, the whole idea behind having the party show mercy was to really get the players to think about what they're doing, and then once they see the consequences of their actions, to maybe think again when it happened. So
yeah. Yeah, and then the other one was a time that this one might have been the Iron Gods, but was the one that I was in. I think I was in an arena. I had challenged the king or something like that, and Chris's character sends in some atomic bomb or something that just destroyed the whole place.
Yeah. So that was Iron Gods. Chris's character was this gnome, like Golemancer, and yeah, we had all gotten in. No, all of you minus Chris's character and my character had gotten into the castle, and were ready to basically finish the campaign by challenging the king and doing what the story really wanted you to do. Then Chris's character launches this crazy magic item, basically a cannonball that had a dimensional pocket in it that was filled to the brim with explosives. And
now Chris claims that he didn't, if I remember correctly, he claims that he didn't know it was going to have that that kind of effect. So he swore I didn't know.
Right, and that's completely logical. But in Iron Gods there are other machines at work, especially in the castle. There were engines, some of them fusion engines that were still functioning. So yeah, once they took enough damage, they exploded too. So it just became this cascade of explosions that all happened within a matter of a few seconds from one another, that just created this crater. I'm honestly surprised Steve let us live through that.
Because I don't remember if I challenged the king, but I don't remember even getting a shot or punch off. And then this explosion happens, and my character's underneath all this rubble.
If I remember correctly, and this could just be wishful thinking, but I want to say that you and the king fought and you won, and that's when the explosion hit.
Oh, that's right. I was going to get the crown or whatever, and then it's like my reign was short lived.
Yeah.
But suffice to say that when you get together to do RPGs, the whatever you're doing, the campaign, whether it's pre-generated or home-brewed, the foundation is there. But when you get a bunch of fun-loving people together, that's where all the memories come from. It's like there's only a few. I can't really tell you from beginning to end what the Iron God campaign was or the Emerald Spar campaign was, and what we did from beginning to end. But I can certainly tell you certain specific instances that created the memories that we just highlighted here in the past 10 minutes or so. So that's what we recall and remember, and that's what makes this thing just a lot of fun. All right. Well, Dawson, thank you so much for spending some time with me here and shining some light on inspiring GMers out there. And
Yeah,
just if you're out there thinking, oh, I played for so many years or whatever, I want to try the GM. Yeah, just try it, and it's important that you have a group of players that want to see you succeed. If you get,
yeah.
if at all possible, get a bunch of players that have GM experience that they could, help you along,
Mhm.
like I have had. So, all right, Dawson, thank you so much, and I'll see you at our next game.
All right, thanks, Thomas.
All right, welcome back to the Mega Meeple. And we're gonna start something new. This is something I've tried in the past, and we'll see how it goes this time. This is like since I've been doing this for a while, and I think that this is one of those things that I think is gonna help me stay on my schedule, because if you listen to other previous episodes, I talked about, I'm going to do this on a bi-weekly basis, and uh, I don't think I've even kept that schedule to this point. So maybe this will help, keep me on the calendar here, and that is we're gonna try out a new co-host here with me today, and I am with Gerardo. How are you, Gerardo?
It's Gerardo. There's no L in it,
Ger-
but hey, that's a
Gerard
okay. Gerardo.
Gerardo. Gerardo. Let me look at the
I,
name. Gerardo.
yeah, it's
No L.
so yeah, it's so easy to throw the L in. I think it's because of Geraldo
Yeah.
Rivera. So you know what? I'm gonna blame him. Uh,
Yeah.
a lot of your younger listeners probably don't even get that reference. Yes, but Gerardo Paz, that is me. How you doing? Thanks, Thomas, for bringing me on today as your potentially new co-host.
Yeah. So, we're gonna see how things go, and see. It's one of those things that's like you could, and if you listen to like other episodes and other podcasts, you could tell that if someone has a co-host, or and I don't, I listen to some of these podcasts. It's like there's like 4 or 5 people there, and number one, I don't see how they keep from like talking on top of one another, and also just to have all those different personalities, all in the same, not necessarily the same room, but on the same on the same show. And it's like to me, it's like, I could only talk into the ether at a microphone for so long, and it's like I start. I mean, hell, I even get bored listening to myself. So I figure, well, Jesus, I hate the hell. I'd like hell to find out what other people having to endure. So that's why I'm really appreciative of my listeners and followers and stuff. So hopefully this will give you a little bit more ear candy, and you don't have to worry about uh, listen to my droning voice all the time. Now,
I wouldn't say it's droning, but I totally get the sentiment of when you are your own host and you have to give yourself like 38 or an hour of material, you kind of make your own tangents, then expand on those tangents, and then you start at point A and then you're at XYZ and you're like, ah,
yeah.
crap. I just ate up 5 weeks worth of topics with my rambling.
Yeah, and that's we talked a little bit before recording. It's like, yeah, you that's so much editing makes. I like to meet some of these people in person, That's why it's like I doubt very highly if I'd ever do a live show. Because it's like editing makes me sound so much more intelligent than I really am. So it's like I don't want people to see me on a live show unedited and see it's like, oh god, this guy is a fraud. He's a fraud. he's not. He's not as he's not as polished as he. So now, I mean, hell, and I've listened to my final edits and stuff like that. I don't think I sound polished, but we've talked about that. You just want to have a conversation, just a banter back and forth, and yeah, that's real difficult to do when you're basically having a conversation with yourself. So it's so I really appreciate your willingness to come on and try this little experiment here. But for now. I don't know much about you, so I know that there's all the people out there listening even know even less. So
Yeah, that's completely understandable. And you know what? You know what this is? You know what this is? This is free topics. This is free time to burn right now because every minute I talk about me is one less minute we have to talk about something else in the board game world. But I'll start from the beginning. My name's Gerardo Paz. I want to say I've been playing the designer board games since I was in college. That's when the bug bit me. I know the first game that started this whole horrible addiction was Red Dragon Inn. Yeah, you ever play Red Dragon Inn?
I've seen it at cons, but I've never been able to sit down and play it yet.
That was the game that got me started. From Red Dragon, I rolled into Bang, I rolled into Wasabi, and pretty much once I discovered Board Game Geek, it was all over for me. Yeah. But I want to say that Red Dragon Inn really shaped my taste in board games. Like anything with player variance and character powers and anything that makes you unique, highly thematic games, a little bit of randomness and a little bit of zaniness. That's my jam, right?
Okay.
I appreciate the more quote unquote drier games like Catan and such, but that's not where I usually roll my die.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said that was your introduction, but it also really shaped on the type of games that you really jived with.
Yeah,
I
really like.
That's pretty wild because it took me quite a few years to find out what kind of games I really enjoyed. So when I first got into board games, I just went out and just bought a whole bunch of shit. And let me try this. Oh, this looks good. This looks good. And I knew I was big into artwork and theme.
I love theme.
I remember getting a book, or not a book, a game of Ashes, Rise of the Phoenix Born. I knew absolutely nothing about it. I just looked at the box and a game that pretty with a box that pretty with all the artwork and stuff, it's got to be a pretty cool, decent game. And so that was one of those games that I got, and I had absolutely no idea what it was about or what it was. Just by the artwork on the box. But yeah, that's pretty cool that you came out of the gate running and knowing exactly what your player profile, so to speak, was.
I mean, I wouldn't say I know. It was more like in retrospect when I look back. And I think a big chunk of it is who I was playing with, because I mean, we've all been there. Like in every board game group, there's the bankroller. You know what the bankroller is? The one that and that's me. So it was kind of a chicken and egg thing where I was buying these games, and since I was buying kind of like these thematic games, my friends would be playing those thematic games, and that's where their taste was. So I would see something like Brass, right? And I go, ooh, I don't think I get that to the table with my group. So I influence them and they influence me, but and it just kind of like circulated. I mean, while I like the type of games I described, I will definitely try other stuff. And one thing I'm really happy at with this phase in where I am right now with board game collecting is like the worst phase to be in is where you just buy everything. You know that, you know that, yeah. And I have been fortunate enough to be acclimated to enough systems and enough game types where I could get a game rulebook and read it and understand how the systems intersect and play, and I'd be like, oh, okay, this rules it's like blank but blank. And then I'm less inclined to get it because I already have a game that fits that niche. But when I pick up something or I read something where I go, oh shoot, this is really different and it's something not in my collection, I'll grab it. Because, board game, like, I like to look at your board game collection as your pantry of food and a board game night as like a big 3-course meal. And, you got your like big pot roast and you got your rotisseries, and you don't want to overload of one type of game. Like you don't want to do Power Grid, then some other big auction game just because you already got that itch scratch. You go with Power Grid. Yeah.
That reminds me. I forget where I saw this, but somebody had to help solve the problem. Is like, oh, well, what do you want to play? Oh, I don't know. What do you want to play? Oh, I don't know. He went and put together a menu. He wrote up a menu, and all the stuff on his menu was the list of his games that he had. And he would, like and he'd write it up like, okay, the name of the game would be, the name of the dish, and then a quick blurb of what the game is about. But then he'd do like, the player count would be serves this many people.
Oh my God, that's so brilliant.
Calories was like something else, and he would divide it up into like appetizers, main course, kids menu, dessert, that type of thing, and just so. And it was really neat. It's like he'd give his players the menu, and they'd order from the menu what they wanted to play.
Yo, I might want to do that. Dang. I really appreciate that. Like, when we're a hobby, we like, oh, this is the game that you based a game night on, or this is a good filler game, or this is a good like a good warm up game to get your brain all like jazzed and stuff. But that's been my sphere. I mean, I've done that. I've beta tested a few games. I'm actually friends with one of the game designers for Level 99 Games. So yeah, that's cool. But that's a little about me. I've been around the block, so glad to share my knowledge and expertise and perspective on this hobby with you.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for listening. I hope everybody is staying safe and staying healthy during this whole coronavirus quarantine crap. But yeah, we wanted to get that episode with Dawson out. That was something we recorded last year, about June or July or something like that. And then also wanted to get out my co-host, Gerardo. Hope I pronounced that correctly. But we have some more with Gerardo, and that's going to be, I'm going to save that for the next episode. But if you enjoyed some of our banter back and forth, see if it would be available on our bi-weekly schedule. Like I said, hopefully it will help me stay on schedule rather than release episodes whenever I frickin' feel like it. So thank you so much for listening. Again, if you just need some background noise while you're cooped up at home, but please stay safe, stay healthy, stay at home. Jesus Christ, stay the fuck at home. Don't flatten the curve, So until next time, this is Tom, and under medical ordered quarantine. But hey, I'm an introvert, so like we said, we've been planning for this all of our lives. So quarantine ain't that big of a deal to people like me. But try to stay sane out there, people. And I will see you again in about 2 weeks. Me and Gerardo, we have some more stuff talking about. We talk about playing games remotely or during this whole social distancing thing going on. How to play a social hobby in a world of social distancing or isolation. So stay tuned for that. So, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.